Jae-sun Park was tired. The kind of tired that seeps into bones after too many battles. She stood straight anyway as she walked down the long metal hallway of Space Station Serenity. Her black uniform was clean and pressed. The medals on her chest showed her rank, Colonel. Jae-sun was the best fighter Earth had. Everyone knew this. When missions went bad, they sent her to fix them. When enemies seemed too strong, they sent her to beat them. She never failed. Until now, maybe. The door to the meeting room slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, General Han waited. He was an old man with hard eyes who had seen too many wars. "Colonel Park," he said. "Sit." She sat. The chair was cold metal, like everything on the station. "We have a problem," General Han said. He touched a button on the table. A 3D image appeared in the air between them. It showed destroyed human space bases, 5 of them, all broken and burning, all attacked in the last month. "Someone is hunting us," the general said, "and they're good at it." Jae-sun studied the images. The attacks were clean, smart, no wasted shots. "Who?" she asked. General Han pressed another button. A new image appeared, a fighter in strange black armor. The armor fit tight to a woman's body. Her face was hidden behind a silver helmet that reflected light like a mirror. "We don't know her name," General Han said. "Our soldiers called her Silver Death. She leads the alien attacks. She knows our plans before we make them." Jae-sun leaned forward. Something about the way the woman stood seemed familiar. The way she held her weapon, the angle of her head. "Your mission is simple," General Han continued. "Find her, beat her, bring back her tech. We think she has stolen human technology and made it better. We need to know how." "My team?" Jae-sun asked. "The best we have," General Han said. He slid a small metal disc across the table. "All the info we have on her is here." Jae-sun picked up the disc. It felt heavy in her hand. Heavier than it should. "What aren't you telling me?" she asked. General Han's face didn't change. "No one who has faced her has lived," he said. "She knows how we fight. She knows our weak spots. It's like she can read our minds." Jae-sun nodded once. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow. The ship Dauntless is being readied." Later, in her small room, Jae-sun studied the images of the Silver Death. She watched recordings of the fighter in battle. The way she moved. The way she gave hand signals to her troops. There was something wrong here. Something that made the hairs on the back of Jae-sun's neck stand up. She called up the files on her team. 4 people. Tai-ho, weapons expert. The best shot in the Earth Defense Force. Quiet. Careful. Never missed. Young Me, tech specialist. Could hack any system. Small and quick. Always had 3 backup plans. Do-hyun, tactical officer. Could read battle maps like most people read simple books. Saw patterns others missed. Jae-yun, medic. Saved more lives than anyone else in the field. Cold under pressure. Warm with patience. A good team. The best. But would they be good enough? Jae-sun turned back to the image of the Silver Death. The strange fighter stood over a fallen human soldier. But she wasn't finishing the kill. Instead, she seemed to be checking for life signs. Strange behavior for someone who had destroyed 5 bases. "Who are you?" Jae-sun whispered to the image. For a moment, she felt like the silver helmet turned toward her, as if the woman inside could hear her through time and space. Jae-sun closed the files. She needed sleep. Tomorrow they would hunt the Silver Death. Tomorrow they would find answers. But as she lay in her narrow bed, one thought kept her awake. This mission felt like walking into a trap, not set by the enemy, but by her own people. Why did General Han seem afraid? Not of the Silver Death. Of something else. The ship Dauntless cut through space like a knife. It was dark and hard to see against the blackness. That was the point. This was a stealth ship, made to get close without being spotted. Inside the ship's bridge, Jazz Sun and her team watched the star map. They were near Proxima Centauri, the closest star to Earth's sun. A human science base sat on one of its planets. If the pattern held, the enemy would attack here next. Anything? Jazz Sun asked. Young Mei shook her head. Her fingers danced over the control panel. Nothing yet. Wait. She stopped. Heat signs in the asteroid belt. The screen showed red dots moving through the field of space rocks. They're using the asteroids for cover, Du Hyun said. He studied the movement pattern. His eyes went wide. Colonel, they're moving in formation Theta 9. Jazz Sun felt cold. Theta 9 was a secret Earth battle plan. Created 3 years ago. Only the highest officers knew it. How could they know that? Taiho asked. He checked his weapon. His face was calm, but his hands moved faster than normal. Let's find out, Jazz Sun said. Battle stations. The Dauntless slipped through space, quiet as a ghost. They reached the outer rings of the human base's defense zone. The enemy struck fast. Strange ships with smooth hulls poured out from behind the asteroids. They fired blue energy beams at the base's outer shields. Protect the base, Jazz Sun ordered. But I want prisoners if possible. The Dauntless dropped its stealth field and fired. 2 enemy ships exploded into bright flame. The others turned to face this new threat. Jazz Sun put on her helmet. I'm going out. Taiho with me. They took a small fighter craft and launched into space. Jazz Sun flew between the enemy ships, dodging fire. Taiho shot with perfect aim, disabling engines but not destroying the ships. Through her helmet's special vision, Jazz Sun spotted a different ship, sleeker, faster, black with silver lines. And there she was, standing on an open platform on the ship's side. The warrior in black armor with the silver helmet, the Silver Death. Jazz Sun flew closer. The warrior stood still, watching her come. Then she raised her hand in a signal. It was an Earth military signal, one that meant fall back and regroup. The enemy ships began to pull away, not retreating in fear, but moving back in good order, like trained soldiers. They're not running, Taiho said. They got what they wanted. Which was what? Jazz Sun wondered. The warrior in the silver helmet looked straight at Jazz Sun's ship. Even through the distance of space, Jazz Sun felt the gaze lock on her. The silver helmet tilted slightly, as if in surprise or recognition. Then the black ship turned and vanished into the asteroid field. Back at the base, Jazz Sun's team checked the damage. They broke through the first 3 security layers, Young Mei said, but they didn't take anything valuable. They just copied data from the communication system. Jia-Yun was helping the wounded. She called Jazz Sun over to look at an injured base guard. Look at these wounds, Jia-Yun said. Clean. Precise. She pointed to a burn mark on the guard's leg. This hit an artery, but the shot was made at an angle that slowed the bleeding. He would have died from a direct hit. They weren't trying to kill, Jazz Sun said. She picked up a weapon left behind by one of the attackers. It looked almost like an earth gun, but different. Better. The grip fit her hand perfectly. Too perfectly. Colonel, Du Hyun called. He was looking at a security recording. You need to see this. The screen showed the Silver Death walking through a hallway. A guard jumped out. The warrior moved like water, disarming him with a move that Jazz Sun knew well. It was her move, one she had created herself. They weren't here to destroy, Jazz Sun said quietly. They were testing us, learning about us, or about her. Back on the Dauntless, Jazz Sun could not sleep. Her mind kept showing her the image of the Silver Death, using her own fighting move. It felt wrong, like seeing your shadow move on its own. She went to the ship's main room where star maps glowed in the dim light. She touched the control panel and pulled up the locations of all the attacks. Young Mai entered the room. Her eyes were tired but alert. You should rest, Colonel, she said. Something is not right, Jazz Sun answered. Look at these attack sites. Young Miss stood beside her and studied the map. 5 red dots showed where bases had been hit. They seem random, Young Mai said. But they're not. Jazz Sun moved her hand over the panel. New dots appeared, blue ones. These are all our bases. If the enemy wanted to hurt us badly, they would hit these. She pointed to several large blue dots. Main bases, big targets, but they don't. They only hit small bases. And look what all these small bases have. Young Mi's eyes widened. Quantum communication arrays. Tai-ho and Do-hyun came in, followed by Jae-yun. Can't sleep either, Tai-ho asked. He carried his gun, even here. He always did. The colonel found something, Young Mai said. Jae-sun showed them all. Every base they hit had special equipment for faster-than-light messages. They're not trying to kill us. They want to cut off our talks with each other. Or listen to what we say, Do-hyun added. Young Mai went to her own control panel. I've been studying the enemy commander, she said. The Silver Death. I have the computer looking at how she moves in battle. She touched a button, and 2 videos played side by side. One showed Jazz Sun in a training exercise from 3 years ago. The other showed the Silver Death from yesterday's fight. They moved exactly the same way. This can't be, Jazz Sun said, but she saw it with her own eyes. There's more, Young Mai said. Her voice was softer now, almost afraid. I measured her. Height. The way she walks. The width of her shoulders. She looked at Jazz Sun. It's a 98% match to you, Colonel. The room went quiet. All eyes turned to Jazz Sun. How is this possible? Jae-yun asked. A clone. No, Jazz Sun said. Clones don't have the same training, the same moves. They have to learn them. So what then? Tai-ho's hand tightened on his gun. Someone who has studied you for years. Jae-sun stared at the image of the Silver Death. Or it is me, she said. The words felt strange in her mouth. That's not possible, Do-hyun said. But he didn't sound sure. A beep from the main computer broke the heavy silence. New orders from Earth Command. They want us to go to Research Station Horizon. Jazz Sun read. To protect Dr. Kang and his quantum physics lab. That fits the pattern, Young Mai said. It's another communication research base. Jae-sun nodded. Set course for Horizon. She turned to her team. We tell no one about what we found. Not yet. We need more proof. As her team left to prepare, Jae-sun turned back to the image of the Silver Death. She reached out and touched the screen where the silver helmet reflected light. Who are you? She whispered. What do you want? For the first time in her career, Jae-sun felt afraid. Not of dying. She had faced that many times, but of finding an answer she wasn't ready for. The ship turned and jumped into faster-than-light travel. The stars stretched into lines outside the window. They were heading to face the enemy again. Or perhaps, Jae-sun thought, to face herself. Research Station Horizon floated in space like a giant wheel. It spun slowly, making gravity for the people inside. The Dauntless arrived before any enemy ships and docked at the main port. Jazz Sun led her team through the station's white halls. Scientists in lab coats moved quickly past them. Everyone looked worried. Take me to Dr. Kang, Jazz Sun told the station chief who met them. The chief, a short woman with gray hair, nodded. This way. He's been expecting you. They walked to the center of the station, where the most important labs were kept. Guards stood at every door. Dr. Kang was very old. His back was bent, and his hands shook slightly. But his eyes were sharp and clear as he looked up from his work. Colonel Park, he said. His voice was stronger than his body looked. Right on time. Something in the way he said it made Jae-sun pause. You knew we were coming. Earth Command told me, Dr. Kang said. But his eyes didn't quite meet hers. What are you working on that needs such protection? Jae-sun asked. She looked around the lab. Strange machines hummed. Screens showed numbers and formulas that made no sense to her. The future, Dr. Kang said simply. Quantum communication was just the start. My team is close to something much bigger. What? Jazz Sun asked. Dr. Kang smiled but didn't answer. Instead, he asked, have you encountered the enemy commander yet? The one they call Silver Death. Jae Sun's team all looked at her. She felt cold suddenly. Yes, she said carefully. How did you know about that name? It's not in any official reports. Dr. Kang turned away. Word gets around. Young Mi moved to a computer and began typing quietly. Checking the station's systems, Jazz Sun knew. Good. We should set up defenses, Jazz Sun said. The enemy will come. Yes, Dr. Kang agreed. They will. Jazz Sun and her team spent hours preparing. They set traps, placed weapons, and studied the station maps. They put guards at every entrance. But something still felt wrong. Young Mi, Jazz Sun called. What did you find in the system? Young Mi looked troubled. Nothing. That's what's strange. No unusual messages. No data transfers. Nothing. Keep looking, Jazz Sun said. Night cycle came. The station lights dimmed. Jae Sun couldn't sleep. She walked the halls, checking guards. Then the alarm screamed. Breach in Lab Section 3. A voice shouted over the speakers. All security to Lab Section 3. Jae Sun ran. Her team joined her from different parts of the station. They reached the lab section to find guards down. Not dead, just sleeping. Gas, Jae-yun said, checking one guard. Non-lethal. They're inside already, Taeho said. His gun was ready. But how? We watched all entrances. They were already here, Jazz Sun realized. Hiding. Waiting. They moved deeper into the lab section. Through windows, they saw scientists tied up but unharmed. Then they reached Dr. Kang's main lab. The door was broken open. Inside, they found a strange scene. Dr. Kang sat calmly in his chair. Next to him stood the Silver Death. They seemed to be talking like old friends. Colonel Park, Dr. Kang said when he saw her. He didn't look surprised or scared. Right on schedule. The Silver Death turned. For a long moment, she and Jae Sun faced each other across the room. Neither moved. Then the Silver Death pressed something on her wrist. The air seemed to bend. A wave of strange energy rolled out. When it hit Jae Sun's team, they froze in place. Like statues, only Jae Sun remained able to move. And Dr. Kang, and the Silver Death. Now, Dr. Kang said, we can talk properly. The Silver Death reached up and began to remove her helmet. The silver helmet came off slowly. First, it revealed dark hair streaked with gray. Then a forehead with a small scar. Then eyes that Jazz Sun knew better than any others. Her own eyes. Jae Sun stared at her own face, but older. Maybe 10 years older. A long scar ran across the right cheek. The eyes held a sadness that Jae Sun had never felt. But it was her, there was no doubt. Hello, younger me, the woman said. Her voice was Jae Sun's voice, just a bit rougher. I've waited a long time for this meeting. Jae Sun raised her gun. What trick is this? Dr. Kang stepped between them. No trick, Colonel. This is you. From about 12 years in your future. That's not possible, Jae Sun said. But she knew it was. She was looking at the proof. The older Jae Sun set her helmet down on a table. We don't have much time. My device will only freeze things for 20 minutes, so listen carefully. She walked closer. Everything you know about this war is wrong. The aliens didn't start it. We did, or we will. What do you mean? Jae Sun asked. The older Jae Sun pointed to Dr. Kang's machines. His research. It's not just about talking through space. It's about time. He found a way to reach into the past, to change things. Dr. Kang nodded sadly. I never meant for it to be a weapon, but Earth Command saw its power. They took my work. In my time, the older Jae Sun continued, Earth used this power to attack other worlds. worlds that had done nothing wrong. They went back in time and destroyed these races before they could even build spaceships. Why would Earth do that? Jae-sun asked. Fear, her older self said. Fear of the unknown. Fear that aliens would do to us what we planned to do to them. I don't believe you, Jae-sun said. But part of her did. The part that had felt something wrong from the start. You've seen how my ships don't kill when they can avoid it, the older Jae-sun said. You've wondered why we only target communication bases. It's because we're trying to stop the weapon from being built, not hurt people. We? Jae-sun asked. The survivors of the world's Earth attacked. And me. I joined them when I learned the truth. The older Jae-sun's eyes were hard now. I watched billions die in a war based on lies. When I found out, I couldn't be part of it anymore. Dr. Kane moved to one of his screens. I've spent years trying to stop my own work. But time fights back. The more I try to prevent the discovery, the more sure it becomes. The air around them began to waver. The time device was losing power. Listen to me, the older Jae-sun said quickly. In 3 days, Earth Command will order you to take Dr. Kang and his research to Central Base. If that happens, the time weapon will be built. The war that destroys half the galaxy will start. What are you asking me to do? Jae-sun demanded. Betray Earth. Become a traitor like you. I'm asking you to save Earth from becoming a monster, her older self said. There's another way besides fighting. She pulled out a small crystal and held it out. This has proof of what Earth Command really plans. It also has coordinates to a place where peace talks can happen. Jae-sun stared at the crystal. Take it and betray everything she had fought for. Refuse it and maybe allow a terrible future. The time field was breaking down. Her team began to move slightly. Colonel, what's happening? Tae-ho called out, his voice slow and strange. The older Jae-sun quickly put her helmet back on. Colonel, enemy commander. Tae-ho raised his gun. Jae-sun had to decide. Now, she raised her hand. Stand down. She took a breath. This is a diplomatic meeting. The crystal felt heavy in her pocket, heavier than any weapon she had ever carried. Back on the Dauntless, Jae-sun locked herself in her room. Her hand shook as she took out the crystal her older self had given her. She stared at it for a long time. Was it a trick? Was the woman really her from the future? Or was it all a clever lie? But she had seen her own face, her own eyes. No trick could fake that. Jae-sun placed the crystal in the ship's reader. The screen on her wall lit up with files and images. The first file was marked Operation Precedent. She opened it. Words scrolled across her screen. Secret plans from Earth Command. Plans to use time technology as a weapon. To go back in time and wipe out any alien race that might one day threaten Earth. The plans showed numbers. Billions would die. Entire worlds erased, and Earth would be safe. Forever safe, because no one would be left to threaten it. This can't be real, Jae-sun whispered. But as she read more files, the truth became clear. Earth had already tested the weapon. A small moon colony of peaceful aliens had been wiped from time. In the new timeline, they had never existed at all. Only the scientists who did it knew they had once been real. Jae-sun felt sick. Was this why she had fought so many battles? To protect people who would do this. She opened another file. This one showed research on making soldiers, clone soldiers based on Earth's best fighters. Based on her. The file showed images of tanks with bodies floating inside. Bodies with her face. A soft knock at her door broke her dark thoughts. Colonel. It was young Me. Are you okay? You've been in there for hours. Jae-sun closed her eyes. She had to decide. Trust her team with the truth, or keep it to herself. She opened the door. Young Me stood there, worried. Behind her were Tae-ho, Do-hyun, and Jae-yun. You should all come in, Jae-sun said. They crowded into her small room. Jae-sun took a deep breath. What I'm about to show you will change everything you believe about our mission, about Earth Command. She showed them the files, the plans for the time weapon, the tests that had already been done, the clone research. Taiho's face grew hard as stone. Do-hyun kept shaking his head in disbelief. Yum-mi's eyes filled with tears. Jae-yun put her hand over her mouth in horror. The commander, Jae-yun said finally. The Silver Death. She was really you. From the future, yes, Jae-sun said. A future where Earth becomes the monster of the galaxy. This could still be fake, Do-hyun said, but his voice was weak. A very good fake. Yum-mi pointed to some code on the screen. This is real. These are Earth Command security protocols. No outsider could know these. They all fell silent. The ship hummed around them. What do we do now? Taiho asked finally. Jae-sun stood up straight. We have a choice. Follow orders and help create this terrible future, or try to stop it. If we go against Earth Command, we'll be traitors, Do-hyun said. If these files are true, Earth Command are the real traitors, Jae-yun answered. They betrayed everything we thought we were fighting for. There are coordinates here, Jae-sun said, pointing to another file. To a place where peace talks can happen, where we can meet with the coalition my future self is part of. So we just run away? Taiho asked. Desert? No, Jae-sun said. We complete our mission. In our own way. She looked at each of her team members. People she had fought beside for years. People she trusted with her life. I won't order any of you to come with me. This has to be your choice. One by one, they nodded. We're with you, Colonel, Yum-mi said. Even if it's against Earth Command, Taiho added. Especially if it's against Earth Command, Jae-yun said. Do-hyun was the last to speak. If we do this, there's no going back. There never is, Jae-sun said. Yum-mi set course for these coordinates. As her team left to prepare, Jae-sun looked once more at her own face on the screen. Her future face. I hope you're right, she whispered. The Dauntless flew through space for 2 days. No one from Earth Command called them. They had turned off the main communication system. Only emergency signals could reach them now. Jae-sun spent the time studying the files from the crystal. The more she read, the more sure she became that her choice was right. We're approaching the coordinates, Yum-mi called from the bridge. Jae-sun joined her team at the front of the ship. Through the main window, they saw something huge appear. It was a space station unlike any they had seen before. It was round like a ball, not flat like a wheel. It floated inside the clouds of a giant gas planet. The clouds helped hide it. Scan it, Jae-sun ordered. Many life forms inside, Yum-mi reported. And weapons. They're aimed at us, but not powered up. A message came through the ship's speakers. Colonel Park, we've been expecting you. Please dock at entrance 7. The voice was calm. Not friendly, but not threatening either. It could be a trap, Taiho said, his hand on his gun. Yes, Jae-sun agreed, but we've come too far to turn back now. She gave the order to dock. The Dauntless moved slowly to the station. Metal arms reached out and guided the ship to a secure spot. Be ready for anything, Jae-sun told her team. But don't shoot first. They walked off their ship into the station. The air smelled different, clean but strange. The halls were wider than on human ships. The lights were softer. 2 figures waited for them. One was Dr. Kang. He must have arrived earlier, on another ship. The other was Jae-sun's older self, without her helmet. She wore simple black clothes now, not battle armor. You came, the older Jae-sun said. She looked relieved. That's different from my timeline. I didn't believe when I was your age. I saw enough proof, Jae-sun said. The older Jae-sun nodded. Follow me. They're waiting. They? Jae-yun asked. The Coalition Council, Dr. Kang explained. Leaders from the world's Earth will destroy if we don't change things. They walked through more halls until they reached a large round room. In the center was a table with many chairs. Most of the chairs were filled. Jae-sun stopped in shock. The beings around the table were not human. Some looked almost human. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. Others were very different. One looked like a cloud of light. Another was a tall crystal shape that glowed from inside. "Don't stare," the older Jae-sun whispered. "It's rude." She led them to empty seats at the table. Jae-sun sat down, her team close behind her. "Representatives of the Temporal Defense Coalition," the older Jae-sun announced. "I present to you Colonel Jae-sun Park of Earth. She comes seeking truth and peace." The crystal being made a sound like bells ringing. A small device on the table translated. "How can we trust any human? Your kind plans to erase us from time itself." Jae-sun stood up. "I've seen the files. I know what Earth Command plans to do. But most humans don't know. They would never agree to this if they knew." "Words are easy," said another alien with blue skin and 4 arms. "Humans have spoken of peace before, while planning war." Dr. Kang stepped forward. "I bring more than words. I bring the solution." He placed a small device on the table. "My research can be changed. Instead of a weapon that changes time, it can make a shield that protects time. No one, not Earth, not anyone, would be able to change the past." The beings at the table began to talk all at once. Some sounded hopeful, others doubtful. Jae-sun looked at her older self. "Will this work? Can we really stop the war?" The older Jae-sun's face was serious. "It depends on what happens when you return to Earth. The Council will agree to the shield. But will Earth Command?" "They have to," Jae-sun said. "I'll make them understand." "And if they don't listen?" the older Jae-sun asked. Jae-sun thought of the billions who would die if Earth built the time weapon. She thought of her duty as a soldier. "Then we'll stop them," she said. "Whatever it takes." 3 days later, the Dauntless headed back to Earth. The Coalition Council had agreed to Dr. Kang's plan. The Time Shield would protect all races, including humans. No one would be able to change the past. But the hardest part was still ahead. Jae-sun had to convince Earth Command to agree too. "They'll call us traitors," Do-hyun said as they prepared for the return. "We are," Tae-ho said, checking his weapon, "by their rules." "But we're loyal to what Earth should be," Jae-yun argued, "not what some leaders want it to be." Jae-sun stood by the window, looking at the alien station as it grew smaller behind them. Her older self had stayed behind. She said it was better if only one Jae-sun faced Earth Command. "What did she tell you?" Yum-ma asked, coming to stand beside Jae-sun. "When you two spoke alone." Jae-sun was quiet for a moment. "She told me that in her time, she tried to fight Earth Command directly. With weapons. It started a civil war among humans. Many died. And that's why she came back through time instead." "Yes, to find a better way." Jae-sun turned to face her friend. "She also told me something strange. She said that if we succeed, she will never exist. Her timeline, the one with war and billions dead, will fade away." "Is that good or bad?" Yum-ma asked. "Good for the galaxy. Sad for her." Jae-sun looked down at her hands. "She's giving up her existence so others can live." The trip back to Earth was tense. They practiced what they would say. They prepared the evidence from the crystal. They made copies and hid them in different places. As they approached Earth, the communication system lit up. "Dauntless, this is Earth Command. Where have you been? Report immediately." Jae-sun took a deep breath and opened the channel. "This is Colonel Park. We're returning with critical information about the enemy. Request direct meeting with the Defense Council." There was a pause. Then, "Granted. Land at Base 1. Guards will escort you." Jae-sun looked at her team. This was it. The Dauntless landed at the main Earth base. As they walked down the ramp, 20 armed guards waited for them. At the front stood General Han. "Colonel," he said, his face hard. You went dark for 5 days. Explain. Not here, Jia-sun said. In the council room. What I have to say is for all leaders to hear. The guards took them to the great building where Earth's Defense Council met. 12 old men and women sat at a big table. They looked angry. Colonel Park, said the head of council, you disobeyed direct orders. You cut communication. You failed to report. Why shouldn't we arrest you right now? Jae-sun stood tall. Because I discovered that some in this room are planning to commit the greatest crime in human history. The room went silent. Jae-sun connected Dr. Kang's crystal to the main screen. The secret files appeared for all to see. Operation Precedent, she said. A plan to use time technology as a weapon. To kill entire races before they can even build spaceships. Billions would die. This is classified. General Han shouted. Guards, arrest them. Wait, said one of the council members, an old woman with kind eyes. Is this true? Are we planning this? General Han's face turned red. It's to protect Earth, to make sure we're always safe. By becoming killers. The old woman asked. By murdering races that have done nothing to us. The council began to argue. Some supported the plan. Others were horrified. Jae-sun raised her voice. There's another way. A time shield that protects all races from time weapons. The alien coalition, the very people we've been fighting, have agreed to it. You've been talking to the enemy. General Han's voice was dangerous. I've been talking to people who want peace, Jae-sun answered, just like many of us do. She looked around the room. Some faces showed hate, but others showed hope. The fight wasn't over, but it had begun. 6 months passed. They were hard months, filled with arguments and fear and hope. Jae-sun stood in the great meeting hall on Space Station Serenity, the same place where General Han had first told her about the Silver Death. Now the hall was filled with people from Earth and beings from many other worlds. Today they would sign the Time Protection Accords, a promise by all races to never use time as a weapon. Are you ready? Yum-ma asked, fixing the collar of Jae-sun's dress uniform. Jae-sun nodded. She was tired, but it was a good kind of tired. The kind that comes after winning something important. Not everyone had agreed with the accords. General Han and his supporters had fought hard against them. They had called Jae-sun and her team traitors. They had tried to steal Dr. Kang's research to build the weapon anyway. But in the end, the truth had won. When Earth's people learned what some leaders had planned, they were angry. They demanded peace, not a war that would make them killers of whole worlds. Jae-sun walked to the center of the hall. As the leader of what people now called the Truth Mission, she would speak first. People of Earth and friends from distant worlds, she began. Today we sign an agreement that protects us all, not by threatening others, not by fear, but by working together. She looked around the room. Her team sat in the front row. Dr. Kang was there too, smiling. His time shield would soon be built. It would make sure no one could change the past to hurt others. We almost took a dark path, Jae-sun continued. A path where Earth would have become the monster of the galaxy. But we found a better way. Today, we choose to be protectors, not destroyers. The room filled with applause as leaders from Earth and other worlds came forward to sign the accords. After the ceremony, Jae-sun walked alone to the observation deck. Through the big window, she could see Earth, blue and green and beautiful. It worked, said a voice behind her. You did what I couldn't. Jae-sun turned. Her older self stood there, but she looked strange. Jae-sun could see the wall through her body. She was fading away. You're disappearing, Jae-sun said. The older Jae-sun smiled. Yes, my timeline is ending. The war won't happen now. The billions won't die. So I won't become who I am. I'm sorry, Jae-sun said. Don't be. This is what I wanted. The older Jae-sun looked at her hands, which were becoming more see-through by the minute. It's strange. I can feel myself forgetting things. The battles, the deaths, they never happen now. What will happen to you? I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe something new. But it's worth it. The older Jason's voice was getting fainter. Take care of our future. It belongs to all races now, not just humans. Then she was gone, like she had never been there at all. Jason touched her right cheek. A small scar was there, from a cut she got while protecting Dr. Kang during a fight with General Han's people. The same scar her older self had. Some things would be the same, it seemed, but the important things would be different. The door opened and her team came in. Everything okay? Tahoe asked. You look like you've seen a ghost. Maybe I did, Jason said. The ghost of what might have been. Outside the window, ships from the alien coalition moved into orbit around Earth. Not as enemies, but as guests. As friends. What now, Colonel? Do-hyun asked. Now we build, Jason said. We learn from each other. We grow together. Jae-hyun smiled. So humanity's greatest victory wasn't winning a war, Jae-sun finished. It was preventing one. She looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were worlds full of people who would now live, not die. People who would never know how close they came to being erased. That was the best victory of all. The end.